Welcome to the Herschel Medical Society, and today I'm going to be presenting on cancer and in specific carcinomas of the breast. So first of all, I'd really like to get an idea of what exactly you guys know about cancer. Anybody? Guys, come on. Okay, you can give an explanation of what you think cancer is.
Cancer is a tumour that forms and that can spread throughout the body. It can also occur in different places of the body.
Fine. Anyone else got any ideas what they want to present forward? As we've got a full house, someone.
A mass of cells.
Yeah.
I love glucose.
Fine. So I think if we combine both definitions, we can come to a good definition. So cancer essentially is where you've got your cell and it's got several control mechanisms in it, and those control mechanisms have essentially, let's say, been messed up. Okay, and when you have something like that occurring, you can have a mass proliferation of these cells, and these cells can go haywire, and they'll be producing hundreds of copies of themselves, thousands, and they'll keep doing that, and that's a bit of a problem, right? So you've got two types of tumors. One is a benign tumor, the other is a malignant tumor. So a benign tumor is a growth that remains in one place, whereas a malignant tumor or malignant growth is something that is able to spread throughout the body. But that's something we always knew, at least I hope you all knew. Okay. But what's new? What am I need to tell you more? So let's talk about breast cancer. And you might be wondering why specifically this is cancer. There's so many different cancers I could have talked to you about. But what's quite interesting is I like to call this type of cancer a traitor, because it uses the normal mechanisms of post-pregnancy hormones to almost replicate that, but become a cancer instead. I'll show you what I mean. We can remove the title because it's of no use. So what I'll do first is I'll draw a cross section. Okay.
Juice.
So this is pre-pregnancy, right? And then we'll change it to what will be seen in post-pregnancy. So in pre-pregnancy, what you'll see is behind here you've got something known as ducts, right? So you'll have a ductal system. And you've got a lot of these, but not that many, okay? You've got a fair amount of these. However, when a woman goes into pregnancy, are there any hormones you guys remember? That, for example,
Estrogen.
Estrogen, perfect. So we have something known as estrogen. Now, this is where things get interesting, because what is one thing that we want the breast to do after a pregnancy occurs? Anyone? Shout it out. Anyone? What do we want the breast to do post-pregnancy? Huh?
Produce milk.
Precisely, exactly. Because you want the child to be able to get the nutrition that they need. So, what your estrogen will essentially do is it does several factors. So the first thing estrogen will do is it will increase this ductal system. So if you've got, let's say, 3 ducts here, right? These ducts will start to split apart into even more ducts, right? So instead of a basic system here, you have a lot of branching. And this will continue to invade into the breast, okay? And you might be thinking, why? What's the point? Because if I zoom in here now, right? If I zoom in onto here, you've got lining these ducts, you've got things known as epithelial cells, okay? Now, in a pregnancy, what these epithelial cells will start to do is these epithelial cells will start to produce milk, okay? So these will secrete out milk, and that's why the child is able to get that milk from the mother. Now, if I've got more epithelial cells being developed, what do I need? What do I need to support them? What nutrients?
Glucose.
Glucose, what others?
Oxygen.
Oxygen, perfect. So the main things are glucose and oxygen. And, okay, anyone except Abdullah, where does glucose or oxygen come to any cell from? Come on guys, this is actually a bit upsetting and concerning. Where does glucose and oxygen come to a cell from? Glucose or we've got a cell, right? It needs glucose or oxygen. Where do we find glucose or oxygen?
Food.
Forget it, man. It's in your bloodstream, right? You need blood supply.
Yes, because your food has oxygen, doesn't it?
Get it? So we need a blood supply, okay? For God's sake. Now, if I've got an increased number of these ducts, do you think I've got an increased number of blood supply automatically? No, because if I've got an increased number of ducts, what's it also increasing? Hint. Epithelial cells. So you want a better blood supply. And what makes a better blood supply? You get something known as angiogenic factors. Angiogenic factors. Now, these angiogenic factors will be released by these epithelial cells, so spreading all around. And when these do release, they cause for more blood vessels to develop. So you've got a whole load of blood vessels surrounding this now. Okay, is that good or bad? Why is it good? Better blood supply, and we can maintain these ducts. Now, your epithelial cells, right? So if I've got more ducts, what's happening to epithelial cells? If I had, let's say, 2 epithelial cells originally, now after pregnancy I've got, let's say, 10. What type of process can lead to these 10? Mitosis, right? Now, another thing. These cells are rapidly dividing. They're rapidly dividing. We've got angiogenic factors being produced. We've got more blood supply being produced. We've got a whole load of invasive ducts being formed. Doesn't that seem a bit similar to what cancer is? Right? In cancer, what you have is you've got cells which are rapidly proliferating, first of all. Secondly, when you've got a larger tumor forming, such as a malignant tumor usually, you can start to get angiogenesis occurring, which is where you get your blood vessels also forming around that tumor to supply blood to it. Now you might be wondering, hang on, okay, so if I've got some blood vessels, it'll be able to supply all of these. No. Does anyone know what the maximum distance between a cell and its blood supply can be? Approximately.
10 micrometers.
What's around, if you look at your nails, the thickness of your nails is how the maximum distance between a cell and a blood supply can be. Without that, the cell simply cannot survive. Okay, so that means you need a whole lot of blood vessels, and that's something that's similar in cancer as well. You need more blood vessel growth when you've got your tumor becoming larger, because if you don't have an increased blood vessel growth, then your tumor simply can't go past a certain point. It's a limiting factor as such. Now, does everyone understand what's going on here? Sure? Can someone give me a brief summary of what happens during a pregnancy with an increased amount of estrogen, what the changes are? Abdullah, you raised your hand. Go for it.
Oh, yes, of course I raised my hand. Okay, so, she's going through pregnancy.
Yeah.
She needs to secrete milk.
Yes.
You've got increased ducts being formed.
Mhm.
To support the increased ducts, you need more blood vessels. More blood vessels surrounding it means
What causes those blood vessels to be formed?
the angiogenic factors.
Perfect.
Right? And then those blood vessels have the glucose and oxygen to support the epithelial cells, which means it undergoes mitosis very rapidly to support that.
Perfect. And you see, that's how you distribute your workload to someone else. So now, what we'll look at is how this can be quite similar to breast cancer and how a carcinoma can develop. And you'll start to see why I showed you this before I went into that. What's the time, Abdullah? How much time do you have?
So I know how much time we have left.
20.
30.
12 first.
130.
1 first.
15. Fine. Okay, so now let's see how a breast cancer is formed. So if I draw a larger diagram this time. Okay. So we've got our ductal system coming this way. Okay, and we're specifically going to zoom in on this bit, okay? Zoom in. I'm going to zoom in here, and this is the duct. So now this bit is known as your basement membrane, okay? What are these two called? Basement membrane, perfect. Now lining this basement membrane, what do you think we have? Yep, epithelial cells. Perfect. Now, you see, with these epithelial cells, we notice what process do they do a lot? mitosis. In mitosis, what do you require? You require a lot of your DNA to be replicated if you want to do mitosis, agreed? What's the problem with DNA replication? You can have mutations, it's a massive problem. Although you've got degeneracy of genetic code, eventually you will reach a point where you might end up with a mutation, which is a problem. But as I said, you need several mutations, several control mechanisms to be corrupted. Now let's go through it. So, first stage in the formation of a cancer. Stage 1. Now in stage 1, you need the first mutation to cause rapid proliferation, okay? So you want your first mutation to cause for rapid proliferation. What's the problem with rapid proliferation? What's it going to cause? Huh? Let's put it like this. I've got a whole load of cells in a place where they shouldn't be, right? And I allow them to keep growing. What do you think the physical change might be? You might get a lump forming, right? So let's say our first mutation has occurred to these guys, and these are our bad cancer cells, okay? These are our mutated cancer epithelial cells. Now, do you think this itself is going to kill someone? Anyone? No, right? Well, I hope like the sad face doesn't make anyone upset. But anyways, so that's not going to kill anyone. Step 2. If I've got a whole load of cells being formed, what do I need? What's going to limit these from blocking the whole thing? If I've got, let's say, if I've got more cells trying to come here, I've got my capillary here. What's the problem?
Increase diffusion distance.
The distance, massive. These cells can't survive. It's impossible. So, what do these clever guys do? They release what? What did we come across? Angiogenetic factors. Right? Angiogenic factors, which we saw in the pregnancy as well, are post-pregnancy estrogen caused for them to be released. Same thing's going on here. So these guys are exploiting basically what normally occurs. So we get a whole load of blood vessels forming. We've got a nice supply. They're all happy, right? And these keep building up. More cells. Now, again, I'll ask you another thing. Do you think this is going to kill someone? No, right? Yeah. It's going to be a discomfort, definitely. It'll be a bit of concern to the patient, but it's not going to kill anyone here, right? So how is this cancer going to kill someone? Okay, so let's try and figure that out. So step 2, produce angiogenic factors. What do those do? Shout it out.
Blood vessels.
Perfect. So we've got blood vessels formed. Step 3. Now these guys want to go to different areas because in the breast they're not going to kill anyone. But what if you've got these stuck in a massive capillary in your lung? Is that potentially going to kill you?
Yes.
Yes, exactly. So these guys want to somehow end up in the lungs, but they're a bit far away. So what are they going to do? Well, they need to somehow invade this basement membrane, right? I said this was the basement membrane, and this is the blood flow. So they want to enter this blood flow somehow. So step 2 is they develop some sort of mutation that allows the cancer cell to enter bloodstream. Is that fine? Again, is this going to kill someone if it's entered the bloodstream?
No.
There we go. Well, it won't precisely kill someone exactly, perfectly, but you need something else to occur as well. So we've got our lungs here. Okay. If I've got a cell suddenly just ending up, let's say you've got a capillary here, right? If I have a cell, a cancer cell that comes into the capillary, it might get stuck, right? So we've got a blockage here, we've got a bit of a stuck cell here. It's still not going to kill you, because you only have one cell there. you need these cells to now undergo rapid proliferation, again release angiogenic factors, get a good blood supply, become massive. But sometimes these cells don't end up getting stuck in the lungs. So where can they go? What's the next? If you think about it, we've got our cancer cell, went to the heart, went to the lung, then what's the next stop it can go to? You want a capillary that it can enter.
Kidney.
Huh? Yes, but there's one big one.
Liver.
No.
Brain.
It's your bones, right? So that's why a lot of people either will have metastatic cancers for breast cancer entering into their lungs or into their bones. Now entering into the bones, I think, is one of the most painful causes of breast cancer. Because if you think about it, now your bones usually, right? Let's just say this is a bone, right, for illustrative purposes. Right? Your bone usually is constantly breaking itself down and constantly producing new cells, okay? So when it does that, you can constantly be replacing your bones, so you don't have damaged bones as such, right? But now, we have a cancerous cell coming into one of these capillaries, right? And it messes things up, let's say. I won't go into the details because it'll just get excessively complicated. But it messes some things up, right? And that causes for this bone, it'll be able to destroy the cells, but it can't make new cells. So what do you think the problem might be? So, hang on, the bone can destroy its old cells, but it can't quite make new cells. So what do we think the symptom might be here?
Can't make new cells.
Well, that's a bit slow at least. I think you had an idea.
Injuries are not healed.
Okay, so I think that's a good way forward. So essentially, when you've got net negative, right? You've got net loss of bone. So your bone, which was like this, it'll become thinner and thinner and thinner, and it'll become more fragile. And this is already something that's a problem with post-menopausal women who have more fragile bones anyways. So that's even more, it's a massive problem. Mobility is being limited, people are under massive amounts of pain as well. So that can be in my opinion, one of the almost life quality limiting factors of breast cancer. Now, okay, I understand all of this, but you were saying that there's something you're going to talk about genetics, right? So where's the genetics coming here? Is there any gene that we know about that might have an influence on breast cancer? It's quite popular in media. Anyone? Shout it out if you do know. Anyone? Zaid, any ideas? Huh? Well, it's known as BRCA. So you've got two. So you've got BRCA1. And you also have BRCA2. And you might be thinking, what are BRCA1 and BRCA2? I've never heard of them. Now these are known as tumor suppressors. These are known as tumor suppressor genes. So what these guys do is essentially, they notice, hang on, we've got a problem here, right? What's occurring in my cell is not right. So they'll be like, okay, let's send a message to the rest of the army, right? They'll send a message to the generals. Now the generals are someone known as check 1. Actually, we'll go to check 1 and check 2 later. We'll go to first, their generals are called ATM and ATR, okay? Now these guys are like, okay, my seniors have said that there's a problem here, right? Okay, so we need to do something about it. So these guys send a message to their juniors, right? So to the majors or lieutenants, etc., that we've got a problem here. So they'll send a signal to enzymes known as check 1 and check 2. Right? These are your next two enzymes that the message is being sent to. They're like, okay, we've got a signal. Now we need essentially all our privates and like the very lower down officers and soldiers to go and fight the war. So they send a message to someone known as P53. Now P53 is like your full army, right? It's all of those soldiers who essentially go and fight in the front lines, right? Okay. Now with this P53, we've got I don't have enough time to go into P53, that's annoying. But essentially, if let's say your BRCA1 and BRCA2, there's a mutation in there, what might the problem be now? If these guys don't work, if these guys are, let's say, dead, right? This main king is dead. Can it tell anything to its two generals? No, right? It's like, the general's like, okay, I don't have any signal, I don't have to do anything. Okay, and then what about the next guys in line? Can they say anything to these two? No, right? What about this guy?
No.
So basically, because of one guy potentially dying, the whole army is suddenly useless. And that's the problem with BRCA1 and BRCA2 mutations. Because in BRCA1 and BRCA2 mutations, what you essentially have is your main head tumor suppressor gene is malfunctioning, right? So you only have one copy. And if you've got a mutation in the other copy, then things are going down the hill. Because all of your other helpers are essentially void. You can have everything in the world, but it's not going to help. Right? That's why people who have a BRCA1 or BRCA2 mutation are more likely to develop breast cancer in the future. And that's why the NHS recommends, I think it's over 40s, don't take me exactly on the word, but every 3 years you have mammograms done, and every month it's recommended for women and girls to do breast examinations. And especially people who have BRCA1 and BRCA2 mutations are asked to do mammograms at a younger age. That's kind of an explanation of all of breast cancer, and I hope you were able to see the similarities between normal breast development and actually carcinomas in the breast. Thank you very much.